Hook, you ever have that one neighbor who thinks they own the whole neighborhood? Yeah, that's my HOA Karen. Imagine waking up one morning to see dozens of people setting up tables, banners, and even a DJ on your land. Not the community park, not the HOA property, but my private backyard. And when I asked her what she was doing, she told me to mind my business.
Been there for 20 years,
So I did
Karen.
exactly that. I minded my business by locking the gate after all 10 buses full of her guests had arrived. You're gonna want to stick around for this one, because this isn't just about revenge. It's about standing up for yourself when people push too far, and what happens when the quiet neighbor finally says, enough. When my wife and I bought our dream home 3 years ago, we thought we were finally escaping city chaos. A small cul-de-sac on the edge of a peaceful rural community, a few acres of open land behind the house, and a pond that caught the sunset like a painting. It was everything we'd worked for. But what we didn't know was that peace can be disturbed not by noise, but by entitlement. Her name was Karen Matthews. She was the president of our HOA, self-elected and self-important. You know the type. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses that never came off, and a voice that carried through walls. The first time we met her, she told me, we like things a certain way around here. You'll fit in if you listen. That should have been my first red flag. At first, I tried to get along. She dropped by unannounced to inspect my lawn, remind me to move my trash bins, and once even complained that my truck didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. I smiled through it all. I was raised to pick my battles. But as months passed, Karen started acting like my backfield, the open stretch behind our fence, belonged to the HOA. One Saturday, I came home to find bright orange flags marking the edge of my property. When I asked what was going on, Karen told me they were planning space for the upcoming annual HOA appreciation party. I blinked. You mean on my land? Oh, don't be difficult, she said with a dismissive laugh. No one's using it anyway. It's perfect for parking and games. The community will love it. I tried to stay calm. That's not community property, Karen. That's mine. I pay taxes on it. She waved her hand like she was shooing away a fly. You knew people always make things so complicated. Just relax, it's for everyone's benefit. That was the moment I realized she didn't care about rules-only control. Over the next week, I started getting messages from other neighbors. Some were excited about the big party behind your house. Others asked if I could move my fence line to make more space. I told everyone politely that I had no plans to host anything. Most were understanding. But Karen? She doubled down. 2 days before the event, she sent out an HOA-wide email calling it the Matthews Family and Community Celebration, claiming all residents were invited. When I confronted her in person, she smiled sweetly and said, "You should be proud we're using your space. Think of it as your contribution." My wife wanted to call the police, but I told her no, I had a better idea. So I made a few quiet preparations, checked my property lines again, installed new locks on my gates, even left the big one at the front open just for one day. Then, on the morning of the party, I brewed my coffee, sat on my porch, and watched the chaos unfold. One by one, buses rolled in, 10 of them. Charter buses full of guests dressed like they were attending a summer festival. They pulled onto my field, set up tents, tables, and a massive inflatable bounce house. Music started. Kids ran through the grass. People waved at me like I was part of it. And right in the center of it all stood Karen, microphone in hand, acting like she owned the world. I let it all happen. Every bus, every tent, every folding chair. Then, when the last one was in, I walked quietly to the front gate. And I locked it. With a solid click, I smiled, because that was the moment the real party started. The sound of the lock snapping shut was oddly satisfying. It was quiet, almost gentle, but I knew the chaos it would unleash. I leaned against the gatepost, coffee still warm in my hand, and watched as the scene in the field unfolded like a movie I'd seen 100 times before, except this time I had written the ending. Karen was on her microphone, rallying her guests. "Welcome, everyone. It's so good to see our wonderful HOA family all together again," she chirped. The crowd cheered. Kids ran past my fence line, splashing in the pond, while a DJ blared pop music that could be heard 3 streets over. I stood there calm. I had called the sheriff's department earlier that morning, not to report anything yet, but just to give them a heads up. The deputy on the phone had laughed when I explained what was happening. "So you're telling me they're throwing a party on your land?" he asked. "All right, sir. If they refuse to leave when asked, give us a call. We'll be right there." Perfect. About 30 minutes later, Karen finally noticed me. She strutted toward me, her heels sinking slightly into the grass, and waved like I was late to my own event. "Oh, there you are," she said brightly. "Can you believe the turnout? This is the best attendance we've ever had." I smiled politely. "Yeah, it's impressive. Looks like you got all your buses in." "Of course," she said, flipping her hair. "You'll get a thank you in the HOA newsletter for letting us use this space. You're a good neighbor after all." "Glad you think so," I said, sipping my coffee. Then I nodded toward the gate. "Because you might want to tell your guests the gate's locked." Her smile faltered. "What? Locked?" I repeated, jingling the key in my hand. "You know, for safety. Don't want anyone wandering off my property without supervision." Her laugh was forced this time. "You're joking." I shrugged. "Try it." She spun around, marched to the gate, and yanked the handle. Nothing. Pulled harder. Still nothing. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, the dawning realization on her face that she wasn't in control anymore. "Unlock it." Now, her tone snapped from sugary to sharp. "Why?" I asked evenly. "You said this was a community event." "But the community doesn't own this land. I do, which means you're trespassing." "You can't," she started, but I cut her off. "Actually, I can. And if you'd checked your property map before deciding to invade my Saturday, you'd know that." Karen's face turned red. She looked over her shoulder, seeing her guests laughing, playing, drinking lemonade, completely unaware that their grand host had no authority to be there. For the first time since we met, she looked small. I leaned closer. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell your people that this isn't your land. You're going to tell them they're trespassing, and you're going to call those buses back here one by one to take them home. If not, the sheriff I talked to this morning will be happy to explain it to you." Her jaw dropped. "You called the sheriff?" "Oh, hours ago," I said cheerfully. "You know, just in case." She stood there, trembling with anger, before storming off toward the DJ booth. I watched her grab the mic, her voice cracking through the speakers. Everyone, slight change of plan. The venue isn't available today. We'll have to pack up a little early." Groans filled the air. Confused families started gathering their things, kids whining, music cutting off mid-song. People looked around, some even coming up to me apologizing, saying they didn't realize it wasn't an HOA area. I smiled and told them not to worry because none of this was their fault. An hour later, the buses were pulling out, one by one, and when the last one left, I opened the gate just enough to let Karen out. She didn't meet my eyes. She just muttered something about miscommunication and misunderstanding, trying to salvage her pride, but I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt relieved. After the field emptied, I walked through the quiet grass crushed where the tents had stood. My wife joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "You really did it," she said softly. "I didn't want revenge," I told her. "I just wanted respect. And sometimes people don't understand boundaries until you make them real." Later that evening, a deputy stopped by to confirm everything was fine. He chuckled as he stood by the gate. "Heard about the great HOA festival of private property," he joked. "You handled it better than most would." The next week, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. Karen resigned. Apparently, word got around fast that she'd overstepped big time, and not just with me. Turns out, several neighbors had their own horror stories. My little act of defiance had opened the floodgates, and people finally started standing up to her. Months later, that once controlling HOA turned into something better, fairer. People started helping each other instead of policing one another. And every time someone new moved in, they'd come by and ask about the party incident. I'd laugh and say, let's just say it was the last time anyone mistook my kindness for weakness. Epilogue, closing narration for YouTube video. Sometimes standing up for yourself does mean yelling or fighting. It means quietly reminding people where your lines are drawn. Karen taught me something important that day. If you let people walk over you once, they'll build a sidewalk. But when you stand firm, when you calmly say no more, you don't just earn respect, you teach it. So yeah, maybe locking that gate was a little petty. But sometimes the best lessons need a solid click before they sink in. And for anyone out there dealing with your own HOA Karen, Remember, this respect isn't demanded, it's earned. And protecting your peace is never something to apologize for.